Hi, folks. I've got a very special guest with me today. It is David Kurten, who is the leader of the Heritage Party. Now, I first met David quite a few years ago during one of the COVID rallies. Now, you're not going to remember that David. I think it was on, I think, the nurses' rally, and I was
I
covering a piece, and you were in Trafalgar Square and supporting that movement. Tell us why you got involved in that.
Yeah, Liam, thanks for having me on the show. I remember that March actually. I think that was February 2022, and
Yes.
that was when we just had Partygate, and we all knew that the people in government in 10 Downing Street were not afraid of a COVID virus or anything because they were all meeting together. But they then wanted to make doctors and nurses have an experimental injection and say, if you don't have one, you're going to be kicked out of your job. And I was against that from the very beginning, the injections, the coercion to get injections. And I'd actually, one of the best things I've ever done in my life was spent a few months working for the Workers of England Union and representing care home workers that were in the same position back in the late stages of 2021. And, 40,000 care home workers were kicked out of their jobs because there's no job, no jab, no job regulations. Well, they were going to do it to 100,000 nurses and doctors in the NHS. And of course, that's completely wrong. I mean, that's accelerating this tyranny as it was in the country. So that's why I went out on that specific march in February 2022. But of course, I went on all of them. I went on every single freedom rally from from May 2020 right up until June 2022. I saw all of them in central London and a few others in various places, Birmingham, Glastonbury, and so on. Because the whole thing was just wrong. Lockdown was wrong, injections were wrong, coerced or forced injections were doubly wrong. So we had to stand up against the tyranny. And I'm so glad I did because eventually we
Yes.
won. We
Absolutely.
won.
It all came out. And it was, if I remember, it was a very emotional day because they were all laying down their uniforms, weren't they, in Trafalgar Square?
Yeah, I saw that, because they were saying, well, look, if we're forced to do this, well, we're not going to do it. We're not going to take something that could potentially kill us or injure us because that's what these things do. And if we don't, we're going to have to lay down our jobs, our livelihoods. And this is
Yeah.
what the government was doing. This is not something that should ever happen in the United Kingdom. We're supposed to have freedom and democracy, not the government imposing authoritarian tyranny against people and taking away medical autonomy, medical freedom, and essentially imposing medical apartheid, medical fascism
Yes.
on people. And that's what this fake conservative government was doing. But of course, Labour would have done, twice as
Nothing
hard,
worse.
twice as fast, twice as severe. So there's no sort of alleviation for that if you had another party in. They're all as bad as each other.
How pressured did you feel to have the jab?
I didn't feel any pressure at all. I mean, there was a lot of psychological pressure on a lot of people, but I didn't feel it because I made up my own mind from the very beginning. I'm not going to have one. The thing is, I probably was in a very fortunate position because for the first year of lockdowns, I was still a London Assembly member.
Yes.
I tried to get elected back on, and I even stood to be London mayor
Yes.
in the elections of 2021, but I didn't have it. I didn't get in, unfortunately. But so I kind of I was leading the Heritage Party. I didn't have a salary or anything like that, but I didn't feel any pressure because I wasn't going to lose a job because I didn't have a job. So it's not good not to have a job, but I didn't feel that pressure like some people did, the people I was representing, who were very afraid that if they didn't have a jab, they were going to lose their job. And that means that they're going to lose, they wouldn't be able to pay their bills, their mortgage, their family might break down, their life would break down. It was incredible psychological pressure if you were in that situation. But I wasn't in that situation where I had anything to lose.
And
So, I was quite fortunate.
did you feel that you did you wear a mask? Did you feel you had to wear a mask, or did you go against that?
No, I didn't wear a mask. Actually, I made some videos of myself sitting on the train with a mask posted behind me and showing that I wasn't wearing a mask. And I got all kinds of kickback from that from people on social media. I actually had one of the other candidates, when I was standing for the London mayor, actually make a quote about me that I was irresponsible and dangerous, and that was in the standards. And I should be wearing a mask, I should be taking an injection, and so on. And my comment comments were bad. So I had a lot of, you know, pressure on me, I guess, from social media, or people
Yes.
trying to put pressure on me to say, oh, look, here's someone who is, rebellious. But they didn't call me rebellious or defiant, because in a way that's sort of, a compliment. They were saying all these kind of words that were made up. I'm a conspiracy theorist, a scaremonger, a COVID denier, an anti-vaxxer, an anti-masker, a super spreader, all of these things. Those were the kind of things that people were saying about me.
Yeah.
And I actually got banned off social media many, many
Right.
times. I mean, your X, as it is today, I can say pretty much what I want. But back in when it was still Twitter and it was run by, the cultural Marxist censors,
Yeah.
I was banned off Twitter so many times. I was banned off Facebook. I think I got a 6-month ban on Facebook. It was dreadful. So, I couldn't post anything for a very, very long time on there. So those were the consequences to me
Yes.
for standing against this. I was censored, but I wasn't imprisoned and I didn't lose my job.
Was there a
But
point
if I'd
that
have been
you
in another
felt?
situation, I might have.
Was there a point that you felt that you could be dragged out your house and forcibly injected? Did you feel we were heading down that road?
It was possible because
Yeah.
that was what was in the legislation.
Mhm.
That was what was in the Coronavirus Act. That a doctor without any second opinion could take you out of your home and forcibly give you a medical intervention, a treatment. Obviously, we know they're talking about the injections, which they call vaccines, but they're not vaccines. And also, you could also be locked up in a mental institution if
Yes, that's
one
yeah,
professional said that this person is mentally ill,
yeah,
then they could take you away and lock you up. So, and that happened to some people, not
yeah,
not lots of people, but it did happen to
yes.
some people. I mean, I remember Heiko Schoening, that you may remember.
Mhm.
He was at the very beginning in the World Doctors Alliance, the World Freedom
Right.
Alliance. He was a
Yeah.
German doctor, quite well known. He was speaking out against it from the beginning, and he came to London, and he was on one of the same rallies that I was in,
Mhm.
speaking at. In that was in September 2020,
Mhm.
and then he went off to Speaker's Corner, and he spoke there, and he was arrested by the police and
Yeah.
bundled into a van and held for 24 hours. And
Mhm.
afterwards, he said to me, it was very disturbing because they were asking him all these kind of questions,
Mhm.
which implied that he was mentally ill, that he was
Yes.
mentally unstable. And that was the way the police were questioning him when he was in custody. Horrible, and that's the kind of attitude and process that was being done to people who were arrested, who were taken prisoner, who were put in quarantine and all these kind of things. And so this was going on, and it was very, very worrying. That could have happened to me. I'm very glad it didn't happen to me, but I do know some people that it did happen to, and it's absolutely tyrannical.
Did you feel, and I certainly did, attending those rallies, because I agree totally with everything that you said there, that the police were they were terrible during that time. They were so violent on occasions, charging the crowds who were protesting.
Well, I said that. I mean, I was absolutely shocked, and the first time I saw this was there was the rally in August 2020 where I wasn't speaking on the stage, but I did see them trying to come in and get to the stage and
Yes.
take the stage down. They weren't so successful that time because the crowd was so dense they couldn't
Yes.
get through. But I remember the one I was speaking on, the 19th of September 2020. A column of riot police came in. Well, the normal police came in.
Yes.
They tried to close the stage down. They started arresting people and beating people, but
Yes.
then they were pushed back by the crowd. And
Yes.
then a column of riot police came in
Yes.
and they finished the job off. And and then that happened the next week as well on the 26th of September. And when I was there, I said, I was shocked.
Yes.
I never thought in my life I would see the Metropolitan Police march against ordinary peaceful people who are having a peaceful demonstration in
Yes.
Trafalgar Square
Yes.
and start beating them over the head. I
I
mean,
mean, they
this is
literally
something that
came
you would
in hitting
expect.
people, didn't they? They came in hitting
Yeah,
people. I mean, it was quite absurd,
it
because
was incredibly violent. It was so violent, so aggressive. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you see in movies with the stormtroopers or the
Yeah,
Bolsheviks doing it or the Chinese communists. You don't expect it from the Metropolitan Police in London
no,
against British citizens. So when I saw that, and I've been brought up to believe in the establishment. Been brought up to believe that in general, the police are good, the judges are good, the MPs are good, the royal family's good, the
yeah.
NHS is good. I don't believe any of that anymore because I've seen all of them or elements of all of them act in a way which is totally disgusting and horrific, treating the normal people with horrific tyranny and brutality and violence. And so, whether it's physical violence or whether it's the psychological violence of dragging people before the courts and then the judges sentencing someone who should be innocent, who should have free speech in any normal society, and then putting them in prison. This is the kind of thing I've seen, and so I've lost my faith in
Yes,
all of these branches of the establishment and the state. And, I don't anymore, sadly, think that the police are a force for good.
no,
They're a force for tyrannizing free people. And,
yes,
I hate to say that, but I've seen it with my own eyes. And,
yeah.
that's not to say there aren't still some good policemen and women who are in it for genuine reasons, but there are a lot who aren't. And the system really, is not working. The system has become tyrannical.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, speaking about those COVID times, of course, we've now got the scenario with the voice coach turning up with Keir Starmer. Well, what's your viewpoint about that? Should people go back that far and bring that against him? I mean, I think they should.
Well, of course,
Yes,
because he was one of the people who was pushing for lockdowns and injections. He was the leader of the Labour Party at the time, and he was always criticising the Conservative Party, who were tyrannical in any way, for not being tyrannical enough. And they made hay out of what happened with Boris Johnson in 10 Downing Street and Partygate.
yes,
They actually got him fired. They were agitating to get him fired. I mean, I've got no sympathy for Boris Johnson. He got what he deserved
yes,
because he's a complete hypocrite who
yes,
destroyed so many lives. But then Keir Starmer would have been worse.
yes,
And he actually said at the time, as did Rachel Reeves, in not in, and, I'm paraphrasing it, but if you lie, if you deceive the public, then you need to resign. So
yes,
he's now being found out of being pretty much guilty of what he accused Boris Johnson of. And it's not like he's just some person who no one cares about who's having a coffee in the countryside. He was the leader of the opposition with a lot of political power who was voting through lockdowns and injections and calling for more and harder lockdowns and faster lockdowns. So he needs to go now. He should go. He should remove himself from office and be
yeah.
gone.
I totally agree. Bizarrely, in my previous career, well, I say my previous career, I was an actor, and I went to drama school with the actress Leonie Mellinger, which was quite bizarre to see her then being, up there as the voice coach. But let's talk about the Heritage Party, because you are the leader of the Heritage Party, but you used to be in UKIP, didn't you? You were part of UKIP. Why did you come out of UKIP to then form your own party?
Yeah, I started off with UKIP. I joined in 2012 and I was in UKIP for the glory days, really. I really enjoyed being in UKIP from 2013 to 2016 because it was a completely different time. And the main focus back then was in trying to get a referendum to leave the EU and to
Yes.
come out of the EU. So I did a lot of, street work, activism, campaigning to leave the EU. And then, though everything was leading up to the referendum, and then we won the referendum, which was
Yes.
fantastic. But then soon after the referendum, just 3 weeks after, Nigel Farage left. He stood down as the leader of UKIP, and then it basically imploded and fell apart over the next few years. And I stayed in it, just I was there, but I was basically doing my own thing essentially for 4 years or so. But then I finally left in 2020 because I just saw that the London mayor elections are coming up. They're not even bothered in standing a candidate, but the people who are left were different people who weren't in there before, and all they're interested in doing is fighting each other. They were fighting each other more than they were wanting to fight elections. So I left because it was just hopeless at the time. It's very, very sad to see such a, something that could have been the party that could have, saved the country in a way.
Yes.
And, if things had been different, I look back, I did try to become the leader. I stood in the leadership elections in 2017. I thought, if UKIP had got itself together back in those days, 2016, 2017, we might not have had Boris Johnson. We might not have had Keir Starmer. We could have had a totally different, experience in politics over the last 8 years. But it wasn't to be. It is what it is. The past is the past. So we can't change that. So I went independent for a few months, and then I started the Heritage Party. Very shortly afterwards. So I actually
Why did
started
you
working.
why did you call it the Heritage Party? Was there a reason behind that?
It's really hard actually to find the name of a political party which isn't taken because if you look at the website of the Electoral Commission, there's hundreds of different parties. There's not just the ones that we know of, the big four or whatever that we've heard of, Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green. There are many, many others, and some of them are dormant. I thought about the Common Sense Party that's been taken. I thought about the Liberty Party that's been taken, the Freedom Party that's been taken. But Heritage is a good name. I,
Yes.
I did run a website beforehand called the Heritage Council. It's defunct now, but Heritage is a really lovely name because it's conservative sounding
Mhm.
without actually being conservative. You can't call yourselves the same thing as another party, but it sounds like you hear it and you think, well, it's the same kind of values. We
Yes.
want to restore our nation, look after our heritage, respect what our forefathers have done. Many of them have fought for our freedom and democracy
Yes.
through the years, through the centuries, and we want to honor that, and we want to leave this country in a better place for the children and descendants that come after us. So we want to honor. Our strap line is freedom, family, nation. So we have freedom. We should have freedom. It's been taken away from us. We want to restore it. We
Yes.
want to put families at the heart of our nation rather than doing everything to destroy the traditional family, which is what
Yes.
the
Yes.
Uniparty is doing. And nation, we're for the nation. We don't want our nation to be subsumed into the EU or the UN or the WEF or whatever other
Yes.
globalist schema is going on. So that's really what we're about, and that's why I've chosen the name that we've got.
How difficult has it been for you to run the party, and how big is the party? And another question: why should people vote for the Heritage Party?
Well, it has been difficult because as when I started it, there was nothing going on in the right wing, if you like. So UKIP had fallen apart, the Brexit Party had deactivated. So I thought, well, I've been working on this for 6 months, behind the scenes. I launched it publicly in September 2020. As soon as I launched it, loads of other people said, "Oh, we're going to do the same thing."
Right.
Which was very disappointing. Is like, well, why are you doing something, to compete with me rather than joining in?
Yes.
Reclaim, for example,
Yes.
reform and lots of other things. But so that's been the most difficult thing is trying to get through the PR machine, get the message out. I mean, I'm very, very happy with the party and the manifesto. The members we have are building, we've got really fantastic members. We're not as big as some other parties, we got a few hundred members and we got a few thousand supporters and volunteers and activists and subscribers. So we got, we're not as big as the parties you see all the time on the television, if you
Yes.
like, sadly. I hope we will be one day because I think we really do have the principles. Because I think what the difference between us and some other parties that grew up at the same time is that everything we do is based on principles. So I thought about this, a lot when I was writing the manifesto and setting up the party is that we're a socially conservative party. Party, which has certain foundational values and principles, like traditional family values,
Mhm.
like low taxation, like free speech, a free market economy, low immigration. We need to control our borders, and essentially some of the things which you could say are Christian principles as well. Like we
Yes.
believe in traditional marriage, we're pro-life, and things like that, which other parties don't have because they decide their policies on the basis of polling. They really are populist parties that will like blow with the wind. So you've seen Reform, for example, they supported the war in Ukraine,
Mhm.
and then they didn't.
Yes.
But yeah, so they changed
Yeah.
depending on what they think is popular at the time. Whereas we could say, immediately, this is our principle.
Mhm.
This country should not be getting involved in third-party foreign wars. The
Yes.
only time we should be using the military to do anything is to defend our own borders,
Yes.
not to be getting involved in Russia versus Ukraine or Israel versus Palestine or India versus Pakistan. And we stay out of those things. So that's a principle, and then we can immediately apply a policy to that to individual situations. So I think people like that, and that's why we got really, really good, strong members, and we're building up local branches now, and it's very exciting actually coming into the local elections we got this year. So I'm looking forward to the future for the Heritage Party.
Fantastic. And what do you feel now about UKIP? They've got a new leader. Do you think that they're sort of resurrecting themselves, or do they have a future? Because I know there's quite a few people on this channel who are the viewers who are sort of divided between maybe voting Reform or UKIP. Well, what's your view on UKIP now, having been an ex-member?
Well, I mean, what I would say is the Heritage Party is another option for you to look
Yeah.
at. I mean, it's a surprise to be honest, because I thought UKIP would just finish, but it hasn't finished. There's a few people who've stayed and kept it going, and then almost by default, you've got this new leader, Nick Tacconi. I met him once at a Turning Point meeting, ages ago. Nice chap. What he says is I would agree with a lot of what he says. But I think the thing with UKIP at the moment is it's very much tying up with Tommy Robinson, and it's becoming a Tommy Robinson party.
Yeah.
And I think that is, the people who support him is going to be that they're going to like that, but then the people who don't, it might put them off. So I think they're going into a certain niche there,
Yeah.
whereas the Heritage Party isn't. We're appealing to everybody
Yes.
on the basis of our principles rather than supporting a particular personality.
What are your views on Tommy Robinson? Because you did a piece there the other day saying that you didn't go on the march, the recent march. Had you wanted to go on previous marches to support what he was doing, and
I
why
thought
didn't you?
about I thought about going on some previous marches. I was going to go to one, but unfortunately, I was a bit ill.
Yes.
The video I made wasn't about Tommy Robinson himself. It was about the march. It was about the rally and things I heard on the stage and things I saw from watching the videos. And the 2 points I made in the videos you might have seen is there were a lot of Israeli flags there, and especially that there's actually been constructed and put at the front of the rally deliberately. And this bizarre thing where there was a half British, half Israeli flag. And I'm like, well, this was originally supposed to be something called the Unite the Kingdom rally. And
Yes.
then it kind of turned into a Free Tommy rally. So it was all about one person. And
Yes.
yeah, he is a political prisoner at the moment. There's no doubt about that, because the person who actually laid the charges against him for contempt of court was the Labour Attorney General, Lord Herman. So it's a political charge. He shouldn't be in prison at the moment for what he's accused of doing. And I've said that. And I would agree with Tommy Robinson or Stephen Yaxley Lennon on so much stuff, 80% of stuff that he says, which is great.
Mhm.
But there are a couple of things I don't agree with him on, and I don't agree with this focus on Israel. I
Yes.
think you need a much more nuanced approach to the Middle East,
Yes.
because both sides are committing atrocities,
Yes.
Hamas and the IDF. and the Netanyahu regime, and you can't say there's one good side and the other one's bad. They're both bad as each other. In fact, Israel has killed more people than the Palestinians have, so you have to recognize that. So I think that the Middle East should be kept completely out of anything to do with patriotism and
Yeah.
uniting the kingdom and trying to restore our nation in the UK. The second thing I don't agree with Tommy Robinson on is when he says he doesn't want immigration of Muslims, but let's have lots of Hindus, lots of Sikhs
Mhm.
coming to the country from India. I don't agree with that. I think we need to control our borders and have a moratorium on
Yeah,
immigration and
I
have
agree.
very, very low immigration from anywhere. I mean, just a few, yeah, maybe a few hundred people who are going to start businesses or
Yes,
who have got scarce skills.
yes.
But certainly not people coming over to do semi-skilled work or unskilled work from India and Nigeria, because the four biggest countries in terms of the numbers of people coming to the country for legal immigration are India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nigeria.
Mhm.
Well, there shouldn't be hardly any people coming from those countries, not singling them out, but
Yeah.
from anywhere. So I don't agree with him on that particular policy. So, and that's a disagreement that I've said I had before. So
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to the argument that, there are quite a few parties on the right, and therefore that is the vote is then being sort of split up, isn't it? And that really they should all join together. So the smaller people should all get behind one party.
that's something a lot of people have said to me, but I mean, I'll say two things on that. Number one, as I've said before, we were the first one to
Yes.
set up in a vacuum. As I said before, UKIP had, pretty much disintegrated. They were fighting each other. The Brexit Party had deactivated in 2020. So there was nothing right of the Conservative Party at all. And so I was still a London Assembly member at the time. So I thought it's just the great opportunity to start up a new party, to create something
Yes.
with a new branding, a new message, slightly new, that is genuinely a socially conservative party.
Mhm.
So I think that now there are other parties, in the mix as well, but none of them are really socially conservative. I mean, people talk about reform, and at the moment they've got a lot of media attention. They are basically a PR machine. But
Mhm.
as I've said before, I don't think they have principles.
Mhm.
They base their policies on polling, and
Yes.
they're not a socially conservative party. They are a libertarian or classic liberal party. And whereas I would have some agreement with them on some things, when it comes down to issues of conscience, we have a policy. For example, the assisted dying bill, as it's called, the real name is what's the terminally ill adults end of life care bill, introduced into Parliament by Kim Leadbeater. The majority of Reform MPs voted for that. They voted for euthanasia,
Yes.
along with Labour and the Lib Dems. Well, the Heritage Party has it as a party policy that
Mhm.
we are against euthanasia, as we are against abortion, and we're for traditional marriage between a man and a woman.
Yes.
So we have those specific policies on issues of conscience because we are a specifically socially conservative party with Christian principles. And that's then that's not exclusive to Christians, but there are things that I think that we need to get back to restore our nation. So it's very, very important that we actually have a party that represents those things. And we do attract a lot of people to us who specifically are looking for a party that has a policy that is socially conservative on those issues. And there isn't anything else like that.
No. And how do you feel about Nigel Farage? Because obviously you were so part of that Brexit campaign. It's funny because I kind of mirror our activity because I was part of that Brexit campaign, filming all that time, and then the COVID thing. Pro.
Well, I get on with him. I get on with him personally. I no hard feelings against him personally. Occasionally, I see him in the backstage area
Yes.
of GB News when I'm on there.
Yes.
But in terms of policy, I think you've got pre 2016. Where we would agree on everything because we were mainly trying to get out of the EU, and he was also standing up for free speech in that time. Then you've got 2016 to 2020, where he sort of disappeared, and he wasn't really anywhere to be seen
Yes.
much, or 2019. Then he came back. But then you've got the period from 2020 onwards. And
Yes.
I think, this is where we've had lockdowns, injections,
Yes.
Ukraine war, the situation in Gaza. free speech. And I think since 2020, he's been on the wrong side of all of those issues.
Yeah.
I was against lockdown from the beginning, reform were for it. I was against injections, reform were for injecting people. Nigel Farage says Tony Blair would be a great person to lead the injection rollout in the UK. I thought, what on earth are you talking about? Tony Blair is,
I
a
know.
hideous person. You
It's
wouldn't want him
worse.
anywhere near anything.
Yes.
And then, on Ukraine, Farage was silent for 2 years, where Richard Tice was taking the lead and, agitating for more money, more weapons to go to Ukraine to keep the war going. Farage said a little thing belatedly in the election campaign in 2024. Since, what is it, the October the 7th, when Hamas attacked
Yeah.
Israel, then their position has been Israel's got the right to defend itself, do whatever it likes. Whereas I've said, well, no, we need to try to stop the slaughter there. Not least because if it carries on, we're going to have like 2 million Palestinian refugees coming into Western Europe. We need to help them to stay in their own lands
Yeah.
and stop bombing them, killing them, and blowing up their houses.
Yes.
And I don't know, no one else seems to be saying that. So, to summarize, post 2020, Farage and Reform have been on the wrong side of everything.
Yeah.
And I think the Heritage Party has taken the right position. So there's a lot of, divergence in our policies and since 2020, and you can see that. And if you like what we stand for, then we're the party for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're a very principled man, and you've stood by your principles throughout. So yes, I do think folks, people should look into the Heritage Party, the viewers here. Now, of course, we've got a fantastic Prime Minister at the moment with Keir Starmer. One of the things, the biggest issues that I've had with him is obviously the issue of free speech. Has that worried you? Do you feel you're being curtailed over free speech?
I do. I have to be careful now because I write something and I think, "Ooh, I better not write that because
Yeah.
I might get into trouble." I mean, yesterday, for example, there was this picture in Heathrow Airport which said "Portrait of Britain,"
Yeah.
and there was like a foreign man in some kind of white burqa thingy. And so I said, "This is not a portrait of Britain." And what I was originally going to write was, "It's a foreign bloke in a dress," and I thought I better not write that, so I changed it to say it's a bloke in some foreign clothes. And I thought I got to temper this down a bit because if I write that, you never know. The police
Yeah.
might come and knock on my door and saying that's racist and whatever. So I am all the time
Yeah.
um mollifying my language,
Yes.
thinking about the language I use, and we shouldn't have to,
Yes.
because the thing is, we don't actually know what we can say and what we can't. I mean, it's not defined. It's just someone has to feel offended
Yes.
and then they can report you to the police,
Yeah.
rather than something being an objective criminal act
Yeah.
like inciting violence.
Yes.
We need to get back to things which are objective, but the law is subjective at the moment, and you don't know what you can say and what you can't. Unlike in the United States, where they have the First Amendment and freedom of speech is an absolute right. They
Yes.
see here it's a qualified right. So you have to be careful.
Yes.
And, it's a very, very dangerous situation to be in.
So, what are you thinking? We've only got 5 minutes left here, and it's zooming through, folks.
Yes, yes.
What do you think about Trump's election? I mean, I've got to say that I'm very pro-Trump. I like Trump.
Mm.
What's your viewpoint on him?
That's fantastic. He's doing such good for America. Oh,
Yeah,
he's smashing the DEI and the
yeah,
cultural Marxism. He's smashing the net zero. He's like, drill, baby, drill. We're going to go back to carbon-based energy, come out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He's
yeah,
coming out of the World Health Organization.
yeah,
He's defunding all of the DEI
yeah,
programs, the foreign aid program, USAID that they've got there. And he's putting America first.
yeah,
And he's going back to sanity and,
yeah,
rebuilding the economy again, which is what people need, and then they'll have jobs. He wants to bring manufacturing back to the USA. I mean, it's brilliant for American people. He couldn't have anything better. And
no.
I'm looking on jealously from here in the
Oh,
UK
well,
because we've got the exact opposite with Starmer, who is deliberately demolishing the country.
yes, absolutely. I mean, I love it. And folks, if you don't watch it, I would watch Fox News. I love watching Fox News. It gives me the updates all the time of, what's going on in America. It really lifts my heart a bit, with Keir Starmer. I mean, how bad is Keir Starmer and can he survive?
He's very bad, and I don't think he's incompetent. I think this is a deliberate
Yeah,
demolition. He's
yeah.
destroying society. He's destroying the economy with Rachel Reeves as well. You
Oh,
know, she's done all of these things which hurt businesses, which hurt workers, farmers, private schools, or the whole lot. Council tax is now going up, so the people have been hammered by, businesses having extra taxes, so they're laying off workers and now got to pay extra council tax in lots of areas like Bradford, Birmingham, etc. This is a deliberate demolition, and there are a lot of people in the front bench of the Labour Party who really are quite incompetent, who
yeah.
don't have a very high IQ. Like David Lammy, for example.
Oh,
That doesn't. He looks like he's a few bulbs short of a pack, but behind the scenes, I think Keir Starmer is very, very clever. He is diabolically clever, and his government is causing, wreaking havoc deliberately to society, culture, and the economy. And will he survive? I don't know. It needs a lot of Labour MPs the Labour MPs will need to remove him. You need at least 80 of them to
yes.
turn against him, either start a new party on the left,
Mhm.
because his base is unhappy with him, what he's done to
Yes,
pensioners and so on.
yes.
And there are moves and murmurings that his own party is becoming agitated with him. So we'll see. He may not survive.
Mhm.
And I hope he doesn't, because he needs to be gone, and we need to
Oh,
restore our nation before 4 years are out. We can't have another 4 years of Starmer,
no,
because there
no.
won't be anything left.
Damage this country would be undergoing. So, in our last couple of minutes, so if people want to find out more about the Heritage Party, where should they go? What should they look at?
Look at our website, heritageparty.org.
Mhm.
You can read our manifesto there. You can become a member there. You can see, where we're standing in elections as well. So that's the first place to go. I'm also on the X is my main platform. I've got 175,000 followers now, so thank you if you follow me at David Curtin. The Heritage Party is also on X at Heritage Party UK, and I'm on YouTube. I put a lot of things out on YouTube as well. But the main website, a point of contact, is heritageparty.org, where you can join.
Yeah, so folks, do have a look at David Curtin and the Heritage Party because they're very interested, very interesting party, a very principled man, David Curtin. He's stood up for his beliefs all the way through and has been consistent all the way through. So it's well worth a look, and it's nice to have a different voice because I've seen you there prominently at all these sort of demonstrations, and you really stand up for what you believe in, don't you?
Yeah, I do, and you have to. They try to coerce you to be quiet, but we got to stand up. I mean, I just can't be quiet about things. When I see something is wrong, I've got to say something. To feel like at least I've done something to speak against what's going on,
Yeah.
if nothing else. And then, but hopefully, we'll all get together, and what I want us to do is to be the government. We need to become the government as well. So I'm very happy to speak out, but I'm also taking action to try to help people become candidates to take over local councils and ultimately to take over Westminster, so we can restore our nation again.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, David, for being with me. It's been a huge pleasure, and I wish you great success with the Heritage Party.
Great. Thanks, Liam.